Welcome to the Anti Average Podcast. My name is Justin Carrico, and this podcast is for those who want to stick it to the status quo. If you are tired of being average, if you refuse to just go with the flow, if you believe your life is worth more and you want to contribute more to this world, then this podcast is for you. My goal is to give you the inspiration and information that you need so that you can take your next step, so that you can truly make a difference and impact in the places that you live and work. We're going to dive right in because ultimately my goal is to provoke you towards your potential. So, this is our first podcast. We are starting off with a two-part series. I'm calling it Simple Growth. So many times we make growth complicated, we make it hard. We know what to do and we just don't do it. So, my goal is to remind you what to do and to push you towards it. So, Simple Growth is what we're calling this. It's really going to be 6 strategies that prevent settling because, in the end, we don't want to settle in our life. We don't want to get comfortable. We don't want to get complacent. We want to make our life count and we want to make this ultimate contribution to the world in which we live. I remember when I was young in my career as a leader, honestly, I was placed as a leader way too young. And at 22, I began to lead other people for the first time ever. And I remember reading my first book at the age of 22. There was a guy named John Maxwell. He had written like 70 something books at the time. And I was thinking, this guy probably knows something on leadership since he wrote over 70 books on leadership. And so I picked up one of his books and I started reading it, and it probably made the biggest impact in my life and in my leadership. And so I wanted to start my podcast with really like paying homage to him, I guess you would say. So some of this that you're going to hear today actually stems from one of the most influential books that I've read in my life. It's called The 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. It's by John Maxwell. I am a Maxwell certified coach and trainer and leadership person. So I love what he does, but thought I would share some of those tips from him. Again, kind of placed into my own little package called 6 Strategies to help you stop being stagnant and to start growing again to prevent settling. So we're going to start off with 3 today. And then we're going to give you a few weeks to start experimenting and implementing these 3. And then we'll move to the next 3. We're going to drop this podcast on the first and third Thursday of every month. So make sure you subscribe, you like, you comment if you actually enjoy and feel like this is adding value to your life so that other people can hear it as well. The one thing that is true for every human being, whether it be a team, every organization, every school system, every business, is that we will never grow and reach our full potential of what could be if we get comfortable and settle for what is. If we get to the place where good is good enough, then that's where complacency comes in. So, if you really want to stick it to the status quo, then the first strategy of simple growth is this. Number 1, you have to be intentional. You got to be intentional. You can't just live life on accident. Life doesn't just happen, at least not that life that you want and dream of. You have to make it happen. A few months ago, I was sitting at the dinner table. My 11-year-old daughter, she had a friend over that night, and we were sitting at the dinner table, and they started to discuss how when they got married, they wanted to be a certain height. Now, picture these 2 girls, 11 and probably 11 or 10, something like that, maybe 12, and they're picturing how tall they wanted to be when they got married. And I'll never forget, the friend of my daughter, said, "Well, my sister wants to be 5'4" when she gets married." Now, I don't know how tall her sister is, but my daughter responded with, "Well, if she keeps trying, maybe she will be." I don't know about you, but if trying determined our height, I promise you, I would be somewhere around like 6'2", 6'3", but I'm not. But I do love what my daughter was implying. And my daughter was implying that growth doesn't just happen. You have to be intentional about it. You have to try. And in fact, I started thinking about this. The only things that accidentally grow are weeds. And those are things that we don't want in our lives. That's when we accidentally do something, it's really something popping up that we don't want, and it's a weed. If you want good, healthy growth, you have to be intentional about it. Now, it's easy to say, right? You got to be intentional about it. But what do I mean by that? What I mean is you have to have a plan on how you want to grow. If you want to grow into being a better and more present parent with your kids, you have to plan to do that. Maybe you have to knock off certain times of the day that you will be fully present with them. Even if it's an hour, if you say, hey, listen, as soon as I get home from work, for this hour from 5 to 6 or from 6 to 7 or whatever it is, I will not have my phone. I will not be available to others. I will not sit down in front of a screen. I will be fully present with my kids. I will be a fully present parent. Even if it's for an hour, that's still an hour more than you had been doing. And that is called growth because that is progress. We have to celebrate, and maybe this is something we struggle with. We have to celebrate progress and not necessarily just completion. Just because you completed something doesn't mean that you actually grew, right? You can have goals and you cannot grow. You can check a box. It doesn't mean that you actually grew in some way. I think about my wife. I've been married for almost 18 years coming up. And my wife had a goal on her bucket list. She wanted to run in the Iron Mom. She wanted to run some kind of 5K. And so she started this training program. She starts this training program, this Couch to 5K training program. She wanted to run in this race. She wanted to mark it off her list. And so she did the Couch to 5K. She worked hard. She built up her endurance. And after she ran the race, she has never run again. For her, it wasn't about growth. She wanted to complete the race. She wasn't trying to grow to become a runner. She wasn't trying to become like this different person. This is not who she wanted to become. She just wanted to complete a task. And when we talk about growth, we have to talk about progress, not just checking a box, not just completion, but are you growing into something? Are you becoming the person that you want to become? If your goal is to become a more present person, then what you have to do is you have to actually say, am I growing into that? Not, okay, I did that today, call it good. We're never going to hit perfection. So we can always experience progress. We can always grow in some area of our lives, but to do this, we have to be intentional. Now, when we hear that, I want to give you really what I think is probably another secret weapon when you talk about being intentional, and that is if you pair this with strategy number 2, this is really when we maximize our growth. Strategy number 2 in simple growth is to be aware. So you got to be intentional, but if you really want to maximize your intentionality, you need to be aware. And what I mean by that is you have to know yourself to grow yourself. I love this quote from the poet Samuel Johnson. He says, almost every man wastes part of his life in attempts to display qualities in which he does not possess. I want to read that just one more time so that you can let that soak in for just a moment. He says, almost every man wastes part of his life in attempts to display qualities in which he does not possess. There has to be some kind of awareness. You have to know yourself in order to intentionally grow yourself. You have to know your weaknesses. You have to know your strengths. You have to know what gives you energy and joy, and you honestly have to know what just drains the life out of you. Let me give you an example of why you need to know really, I'm going to call them your struggles and your strengths, or you have to be aware of those. Everyone talks about being well-rounded. I really want to encourage you to ditch that idea, right? Everybody says, hey, got to be well-rounded. You got to be all things to all people. You got to be where you can do whatever needs to be done at the time. And I just want to encourage you, you got to just throw that idea out of the window. It's honestly some of the worst advice that people could give. Now, when I say that, yes, you need to admit your weaknesses and your struggles. And not only just admit them, you actually need to learn how to manage them. Because if you don't manage your weaknesses and your struggles, if you don't manage them, they will become obstacles to your excellence. Right? You've got to learn how to manage them. You've got to learn how to control them. You've got to know, hey, this is an area in which I'm weak. This is an area in which I struggle. And you have to be able to admit that. You have to be able to know that. You got to be aware of it. And you got to say, this is where I struggle and this is where I'm weak. And I got to learn how to manage that so that it doesn't become an obstacle to your excellence. But do not focus on them. Don't focus all of your energy and all of your efforts on your weaknesses and trying to grow them. Because best of all, if you put all of your energy and all of your effort into growing in an area of weakness, at best, no matter how hard you work, no matter how hard you try, the best you may achieve in that area of weakness is being mediocre. That's the best, right? I'm weak here. I'm struggling here. And so the best I could, I'm going to focus all my energy and effort. And I'm going to grow in this area of weakness. And the best that you're going to do, if you put all of your effort, all of your time, all of your focus on it, the best you're going to get to is going to be mediocre compared to everybody else, right? And what you really need to do is say, okay, I'm going to manage my weaknesses. I'm going to manage my struggles so that they don't become obstacles to my excellence. But if I focus on my strengths, then I have the capacity and potential for excellence. And not only that, but you're going to get a ton of joy in the process because you already are good at it, right? You want to find people say, hey, I want to be passionate about this, or I haven't really worked out in my life. Not a workout buff. I just started trying to discipline myself to do some working out. I found a good community, which really has helped me out with that because I enjoy being with people and I'm competitive. And so I found like a CrossFit community that pushes me and things like that. But for me, I don't get a ton of joy in it because I'm not good at it. And that's, if you want to find somebody says, man, I want to be passionate about this, you're passionate about the things that you're good at. So be aware, find out your struggles so that you can manage them, and then find out your strengths so that you can focus on them and so that you can invest in those strengths. Because when you do that, you have a higher capacity, you have a higher potential to actually be excellent in those things that you're investing in. I just don't believe that we were created to be great at everything. So learn to be intentional and learn to be aware. You have to know yourself to grow yourself. And I want to lead to point number 3, the third one that we're going to give from these 6 simple growth steps that prevent settling. Again, third one for today, 3 today, another 3 on the next podcast, drops on the third Thursday of the month. Number 3 is this: if you want to get from where you are to where you want to be, you have to start becoming aware, right? We talked about that with number 2. You have to become aware, not just of your struggles. You have to manage them so they don't become obstacles, not just of your strengths so that you can focus on them and be intentionally growing in them, but you also have to reflect or become aware of your choices. Your choices lead you to where you are and away or to either where you want to be. Every choice that you make either takes a step towards where you want to be or is a choice and takes a step away from where you want to be. Strategy number 3, or third simple growth tip, the strategy is be reflective. Be reflective. Slow down, take a pause so that growth can catch up. I don't know if you get the privilege to go away on vacation, whether it be at the beach or in the mountains, whether you like, just going to the ocean, or if you like camping, whatever it is. So many times when you take a vacation and you slow down or you finally catch your breath. I don't know if this is true with everybody, but for me, I, I learned so much, right? I love to, when we go to the beach, my family loves to go to the beach. We don't like to get in the ocean, which is ironic, but we love to go to the beach. We love the water. We love the sand. We love the sunsets and everything like that. Just the heat of it all. And so when we go, I love to sit and read and marking things in books and writing down ideas or thoughts. And I'll do that for a while, and then I'll get up and I have an 8-year-old son. He wants to play all the time, play football or something. So I'll throw the football with him for a little bit, or we'll search for seashells or whatever with my daughter. And then after playing a while and hanging out, I go back to my book, right? I want to soak in more. I'm thinking about big picture stuff. I guess really what I'm confessing is I don't vacation well. My mind never stops. It's always thinking about different things. I love the opportunities that I currently have in my life. And I'm always thinking about how I can add value to others and grow as a leader and grow the organizations that I'm had the privilege of leading, and how we can serve more people. It's just hard for me to not think about these things when I'm on vacation, because the day to day has finally stopped, and there's margin, right? There's this margin finally in my day or in my week, because I'm away from the day-to-day hustle, that there's this margin that allows me to think. It allows me to reflect. It allows me to pause, and I'm not trying to put out fires, or I'm not trying to solve all these problems, whatever it may be. And it has allowed me to pause and to reflect and to grow really in new ways. As leaders, we are so eager to move on to the next thing, or to fix the next problem, or to grow the next person, or start the next idea, whatever it is. We need to pause and grow instead of finishing and going, right? As soon as we finish something, we want to go to the next thing. As soon as we get this close there, right, we got to lead to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, and we never really slow down enough to reflect and to learn from the things that we've experienced, whether that be during the day, during the week, during the month, or even during the year. If you want next year to be better than this year, then I'm going to encourage you to slow down and to learn from it, so that you can implement the things that you've learned from this week, from this month, and so far even from this year. If not, you and I both are prone to just repeat it and struggle through the same things every single year, every single month, every single week, whether it be in our work life, your home life, your spiritual life, your relationships, your budget, literally in whatever area it may be. We may struggle through the same things because we don't pause and allow growth to catch up. So those are our three. Halfway through this process of this 2-part podcast series called Simple Growth. The first one is we have got to be intentional. You will only grow if you grow on purpose. Accidentally, we will only grow things in our life that we don't want. We'll get comfortable, we'll get complacent, and we'll realize, this is not who I want to be. These are not the things that I want to do. The second step is to be aware. You got to know yourself to grow yourself. Know where you struggle and where your weaknesses are. Manage them so that they do not become obstacles to your excellence, but focus on your strengths. What do you do well? What do you naturally do that others are like, man, how did you do that? How did you come up with that? I never would have seen that. Whatever it is, know yourself well enough to know what gives you joy, what ignites that passion in you, and what others say, man, you're just so good at this. And if that's true, if you can find those things that people are saying you're good at this, or that give you so much joy, be intentional about growing in that, right? Be intentional, be aware, know yourself to grow yourself. And then the hardest piece, be reflective. I'm going to challenge you this week. If you need to, the way to implement this, if you're saying, man, I just don't even know how to start to implement some of this, here's what I want to challenge you with. Tomorrow or today, depending on when you're listening to this, I want to encourage you to set a 5-minute appointment with yourself at the end of the day. Set a 5-minute appointment, whether you're ending your work day and you're going to say, hey, listen, I leave here at 5. At 4:55, I'm going to take 5 minutes and reflect on the things that have happened today, the conversations that I've had with whether that be employees, whether that be other staff, whether it be coworkers, whether it be friends, whether it be my neighbors, community people, whatever it is. I'm going to take 5 minutes and I'm going to reflect on those conversations. I'm going to reflect on the problems and issues that came up. I'm going to reflect on the ways that I was maybe able to help or solve a problem or why someone even came to me, right? If they're coming to you asking a question or asking for your help, it very well may expose something that they see in you that you need to be aware of that you have as a strength. So, I want to challenge you, set a 5-minute appointment with yourself and say, I'm going to take 5 minutes to reflect on my day and to see where I need to be intentional to become more aware of my strengths and my struggles so that I can step into those. And I'm going to pause long enough to let growth catch up. Hey, if this podcast was helpful, I want to encourage you, hit the subscribe, like, comment. It helps us to be able to reach more people. Our goal is to add value to others. We want to give you the inspiration and the information so that you can take your next step and level up in your life. Let's quit being average and let's step into the life we were created for.